All right, it is 1:34. We're going to call this meeting to order. We'll do roll call. Michelle McNulty, I'm here. Nate Reisner is excused. Estella, here. Jess McNeely.
Here.
Ruth Garcia. Here. Jeremy DeGator.
Here.
Paul Mood.
Here.
Jeff Bauman.
Here.
Romara Truly, absent. Steph Santana is excused. Anne is excused. Andeno, Jason James is excused. And Ryan Wolf is excused. Do I do Metro Plan staff?
Sure.
Kate Morley,
Is present.
Dave Wessel is excused. Mandy Mandia Gonzalez, here. Sandra Tavel,
Here.
Kim Austin,
Here.
Tim Mueller,
I'm here. Oh my God. Tim. Karen.
Kai Holiday, and Aubrey Flores are excused. Corey Cooper. He's
Here.
Oh, maybe to add him. Down. Thank you. Okay, is there any public on the call or in the room to public comment? No? Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the technical advisory committee regular meeting minutes of May 22nd, 2024? And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I saw you light up, Jess. All those opposed? Okay, our minutes are approved. Anyone request that we reorder the agenda and to move item number 9 between items 2 and 3. The outcome from the discussion on item 9 may influence the discussion on 3. So we'll reorganize that. We have nothing on the consent agenda, so we'll move right into general business. Update on John Wesley Powell.
Thank you, chair, members of the TAC. We asked Jeff Bowman, traffic engineer, to provide us a brief update on the status of JW Powell. So I will turn it over to him.
Just me?
Just you. All you.
Oh, what's happening?
And Michelle, if she would like.
Yeah, so we're very busy, very active with this project. I think we've had 2 meetings today, maybe 3 on this topic. So it's very front burner. The maps on that screen might be helpful for people to just take a look at. But background, this extension of John Wesley Powell Boulevard was part of the Citizens Transportation Tax Commission, part of our was it called Blueprint back then? Yeah, Blueprint 2040, and part of Proposition 419. The plan is for the city to fund 40% of the costs of design and construction right of way of this project to kind of help this project along, essentially. So if you look at the screen, there's 4 major property owners along the route. The one at the top in the lightest green color is Kenny and Del Rio. And they're a very active project. If you ever drive down Butler Avenue, you can see things happening up on their Butler frontage. They're still planning the southern part of the project, and that's where the John Wesley Powell alignment goes through. They're actively designing that piece of the road through their project. And the north-south piece of kind of 4th Street extension is already built about to that curve in the road that you can see. The next property owner going south is Little America. Little America does not have any active development going on right now, but they are working through some kind of conceptual layouts for that John Wesley Powell corridor. The next property is kind of brown and is the Gibson Smith property. They also don't have any development activity going on right now, but are working on kind of conceptual alignments. And then Symmetry, it's labeled Symmetry Companies. That's also been called STL 405 state because it was formerly state trust land.
Well, portion of it is still state land.
Everything north of the road alignment essentially is still state trust land.
So then the L part,
Yeah.
there's like a weird kettle part that comes out.
Yeah, so they've only taken down like 1/3 of the parcel and they have essentially buyer's rights to the next 2/3.
Yes.
And they're actively working on the design of the road all the way up to kind of the Gibson corner, because they need that with their first phase of development, which is south of the JWP alignment. So we're super active working with all these property owners on both the design, which was kind of our early thing we were working on, which is kind of coming together. Now we're working on who's gonna pay for what and when, which is the hard part maybe. Happy to answer any questions. That's kind of the overview. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to talk about, I mean, the agenda talks about land use a little bit, but that's kind of the road update
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah, so with symmetry, so they have purchased the right to purchase the entire 405 acres. It's scheduled to be taken down, in 3 different iterations that, but all about 125 plus acres. So they currently have taken down the first 126 that is in for plats, subdivision plats. So essentially it's going to be, an extension of Pine Canyon, for that portion of it. The northern part, they have talked to us planning about rezoning, moving an activity center as well as rezoning, and may potentially even rezone the entire site. So it's currently zoned rural residential, which is a 1 unit per acre density maximum, to something that's more in line with the medium, residential. So they are really trying to look at maximizing the areas that pass that extension. To the north, they are also considering like a family lodge, a village type of a development that would have a variety of uses potentially, and that will require likely a rezone, and maybe even a conditional use permit for some of the uses that they're proposing. And then Jeff mentioned Gibson and Little America, and then Canyon Del Rio, we're working with them. So Canyon Del Rio, for anyone that doesn't know, it previously had an approved subdivision. So they have existing rights for a large portion of that. And so they have to, where the road comes through their property now, they have to adjust those subdivisions to kind of compensate for what that was gonna look like. So there's kind of a phase 2 block plat, and that's gonna be a mixture of probably low to medium density housing. And then there's Juniper Point in play. It's not as dependent on the roadway connection, but because Juniper Point is owned by the same people who own Canyon Del Rio, they're kind of brought into this because certain phases of their development will actually need JWP for secondary access. That's also zoned rural residential, and they've been trying to maximize the development of that site through using PRD, which then kind of leaves a remainder of the site that they do want to try to upzone. It's a challenge because of the underlying zoning, trying to get enough of that. They want it, so if you look at the north of the wash to the 40, that area is what they haven't really developed yet, and they've been using that acreage to get the density south of the wash. And then they want to upzone, but then we need to make sure that they don't bring those properties that are zoned or are at this time out of conformance. So we talked to them about rezoning everything to R1, which is a single family residential, just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, which has about a 5 to 9 acre unit per acre requirement. So I will say that these groups are actively trying to maximize and get more density, and sometimes our code, it's not as easy as you would think. So we're working with them as much as we can. And I do think that people are seeing a lot of these large lot developments coming in, but there is a lot of talk about densifying in the area.
Thank you
Yeah.
for presenting for us today.
Chair, staff will be giving a presentation to council on this,
Thank you.
October 8th council
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, thank you for that.
A little more detail, not a lot,
No.
not a ton.
Open for questions. I have a question. So I just want to clarify. So it sounds like along the actual road, those densities will be more, lower density, kind of like rural residential, because you said the northern part of Cemetery So I'm assuming that's kind of where the purple meets the
Yeah.
blue, like
Yeah,
Little
kind of,
America.
yeah.
That'll be higher density. Okay, just thinking from like a road network perspective, especially like transit and even bikeways. I
Yeah.
think most of the, at least for now, the bike improvements, and if there would be potential transit, it'd be along the main corridor. It sounds like along the main corridors where there's lower density, like, okay.
Yeah.
And then Gibson, maybe I missed it, but what type of density and do we know yet?
So they're zoned rural residential up until about, well, at least the last year and maybe even not the last year. Their whole plan was just to give that to their kids. They had they're not developers. I think they have 3 kids and they were just gonna give it to the 3 kids and that's their legacy. As they've been at the table with us, because they've always been at the table, even though they don't have a development plan, because it has to go through their property. They've started to see, wait a minute, there's an opportunity here and maybe even a bigger legacy to leave our kids. So they have actually looked at much higher density, probably more of a medium density residential that they've kind of played with to see would that road support that. And they're working with us on the land use plan to set them up from a land use designation that if they do want to rezone. So what we did with all these property owners with the land use plan was we looked at what their kind of current zoning was and plans and then went one designation higher to kind of encourage them to just densify a little bit more. Recognizing that if you set the bar too high, then they'll never rezone because if they know that they're not gonna do that type of project, but symmetry, so that's on Gibson.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Little America doesn't have any development plans.
Okay, yeah. And another question, just curious how, because if I understood correctly, so Canyon Del Rio, that curve that's being constructed, I guess, I'm trying to understand how, because all the different partners are at the table, like is it piecemealed the construction or how is this construction plan? Like, is the middle part gonna be constructed and I guess I'm assuming the hope is to have it all constructed kind of at once also.
It's not known today exactly
Okay.
what is gonna happen, but there's some things we do know.
Yeah.
Like Canyon Del Rio is, well, we don't know. It's likely that Canyon Del Rio will build their piece early on.
Okay,
And it's likely that the symmetry piece will be built kind of to that corner of Gibson because they need that pretty quickly to get their development going. The middle pieces, it's still up in the air if, well, we're pretty sure Little America and Gibson won't build their pieces. So it'll be the city or it'll be part of a really large project. That's about as much as we know,
okay.
which is surprising because we've been working on it for a long time, but it's just not.
It sounds complicated, so.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be, but it is.
Yeah.
It is. I think that it's unknown, but ideally, the push is that it is all constructed at one time and we're not left with that book and being not vacant or not built.
Okay,
So,
That's kind of the point of the 40% city contribution is to get it connected across so that we have the road network and so that we can open up some of this area for development that's kind of stuck without the connection.
right. And I imagine from just economies of scale and getting one, just from that, it's probably cheaper to, build it all at once versus kind of piecemeal.
it's cheaper to build it today than in
Right.
3 years.
Right.
Not even than tomorrow.
The Little America piece too has the Rio de Flag crossing in it, so that's a long permitting process, so that could lag a little bit.
And the Arizona Trail Crest.
And we have been meeting with Open Space and Martin, Tenzo's meeting on a monthly basis as well to keep that kind of conversation because there's priority corridor through the Gibson property. Priority open space corridor.
We can keep throwing tidbits out for an hour. We're good.
We've been doing too much.
Hold our
today.
peace.
If there's nothing else on that, I'm going to move on to the ADOT traffic count program. Okay.
Thank you. So just a brief update on the traffic count program. I thought we were having a guest speaker from ADOT today, but I don't see them online, so.
Dave said that his meeting ID is saying that it is incorrect, but we have many other people online through the meeting invite. I've sent him the new ID. This may be the problem with
Okay.
him as well.
We'll see if
Oh.
they're able to join. But if not, we can bring them back at a future TAC meeting or send out a report. But the basic idea is that we need to do our traffic counts for ADOT. Historically, we did them on a 3-year cycle, although are now transitioning to doing 1/3 of the counts every year and then applying growth factors moving forward. We are working through the procurement right now. We have someone who is on a multi-year contract. We're working through the specifics of this year's traffic counts in coordination with ADOT. And we'll also do bicycle counts. We did that last year for the first time. And so just wanted to provide the TAC an update on where we are in this process. Dave has a list in the packet, I believe, of the locations he's looking at. If you have something you would like to see counted, please reach out to Dave because we have not finalized that yet.
Okay.
That is it.
We're gonna go to the new item 3, which was the previous item 9. ADOT planning to programming P2P project prioritization and scoring criteria, process and timeline. Chandra.
Thank you, Chair McNulty, members of the TAC. This item is for information and discussion. We are hoping to get your counsel and advice on this item. Next slide, please. So the project prioritization method that ADOT owns is called P2P, planning to programming. And that's where projects on the state roadway are nominated and scored, and subsequently, if they score high enough, they are put into the ADOT's 5-year construction program. And that is how projects get funded. So there's a couple things. One is there is a list that actually Jeremy and I are working on to look at and refine for nomination in the next round of the 5-year construction program. And so that was included in your attachments for review. And I would like you to take the next 2 weeks to look at them and see what is missing and let me know so we can make sure that we are capturing all the projects. The first part of this discussion is we want to devise MetroPlan, an internal way of scoring our own projects outside of the ADOT process. So we want to look at all of our regional projects and come up with a scoring criteria as a group. And so we can be strategic about nominating the projects in the next round of P2P call for nomination. So this will be an internal discussion. Next slide, please. And throughout this conversation, I would love if you have questions or want to interject, please do, particularly our ADOT colleagues. So the districts, the way that ADOT looks at the districts in the state of Arizona and the way that Arizona State Board looks at the districts are a little bit different, but for all intents and purposes, MetroPlan belongs to District 5. And there are a few categories in the P2P scoring process. There's pavement preservation, bridge preservation, modernization, and expansion. And today I will be talking about mostly modernization. So if you look at the slide and you look at District 5, and we are a little bit behind in modernization and expansion as compared to other districts. And this is how projects get funded into the ADOT capital budget. Next slide, please. So similar to how we engaged last year for the strategic grants process, we want to apply a little bit of formality into the project prioritization process for projects on ADOT roadways. These can be relatively subjective, and we want to discuss, are there any others, what's missing, and should any be excluded? The ones you see on this slide here are MetroPlan's adopted transportation values. So the first value, is the project cited in a plan, whether it's a state plan, a regional plan, a local plan? What are the safety metrics? So we have a Vision 0 value, right? we want 0 deaths and fatalities. And we understand that ADOT has a toward 0 death approach because that's a more appropriate approach for statewide. But at the end of the day, we all want folks to get home safely, yeah. So the next icon is, does the project support economic vitality, community character, and social connection? Does the project support the natural environment? And last but not least, does it have ADOT's support as a nominatable and scorable project? So I will open up the discussion now. Do y'all think these are adequate ways to score projects, or do you have suggestions? Is there anything missing? Is there anything on there that you're like, get it off? Like, tell me.
Just have a question. So our district, was it 4?
5.
5. Is that just Metro Plains region or is that greater? Assuming greater. Okay.
It is greater.
Okay.
Yeah, so North Central District
Oh,
effectively
okay. Yeah.
goes, we'll start in Ash Fork, go south to Cottonwood, over to Payson, Winslow, Page, all the way up to Utah, over to Nevada. So we have I-15 basically back down to Ash Fork. So it's by land, it's the largest district in the state. But there's a lot of very important arterial roads throughout that, certainly that connect northern Arizona.
Okay. And sorry, another clarifying question. So in this criteria, you're seeking just for District 5 or all of ADOT's P2P process?
That's a great question.
So we're at this stage, we're talking about prioritizing the projects in the Metro Plan region on the ADOT system. So step 1, Jeremy and Sandra are working through all the projects identified in plans that are on the ADOT system to come up with a succinct list. The list that's in your packet has duplication. Some projects have already been done, some aren't relevant anymore. So step 1, make a good list. Step 2, the Metro Plan itself to suggest to ADOT what our priorities are. So we're thinking we want to score those projects on that refined list in some way, so that way we can say to the district, this is our priority. This came about in a conversation with Brendan Foley, where he asked me, well, what's your number 1 priority so that we can work together to get it funded? And I was like, I have no idea. I have 400 projects on the list and don't know what to tell you the priority is. So this is a way for us to come together as a region and say, these are our priorities, and then hope to work with ADOT to get those prioritized in the capital project
So then
list.
does ADOT give you safety metrics, some data on accidents and?
So we're suggesting that we keep these fairly high level at this stage. Maybe over time we get more refined in our scale, but looking at, is it in a safety plan? Is it identified in a safety plan? Is it a proven countermeasure? Some of the easier tools that are out there to use at this stage, and maybe in 5 years, we're able to get a lot more technical about it. But at this stage, basically forming a small committee that would get together and say, I think that this has very little value to community character, but it's a high safety project, and scoring projects as a committee essentially at this point.
Thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
So does anyone have any suggestions?
Wait, I guess where I was getting with my questions is, I mean, a big thing in Flagstaff is carbon neutrality, like just trying to tie these to city goals. And it sounds like that does make sense because these are what Metro Plan nominates into ADOT's process. So I guess I was just curious on the scope and if that made sense. So that just seems like one big piece that's missing is kind of that, tied to carbon neutrality. I don't know if like the affordable housing crisis, if that makes sense either to tie to that, but that's another just big, these overarching kind of umbrella goals that the city has.
But I guess I look at, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because I definitely agree with what you're saying, but MPO covers city and county, and the county doesn't share those
Yeah.
priorities, and I'm just wondering, Jess, if you have anything to add, like, to that.
Obviously, we're partners, the county's partners with the city in the regional plan and the current update to the regional plan. So as far as the regional plan goals and policies go, except for where they're bifurcated in a couple cases, then then the county supports those goals and policies as they've been put in the regional plan. Does that help?
Yes, and the regional plan follows the MPO, so.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
suggestions?
I heard your question about the affordable housing, and I think it's one of those where I think it's a good idea, but I wonder how we would
tie
tie it and
Yeah,
how it could
no,
be
I-
demonstrated. And so if we knew that,
And maybe it kind of goes to the support natural environment. I'm assuming that means like road widening projects, that goes against the natural environment and that would reduce the available land for affordable, like for housing. I don't know, so. it might tie-
prioritize projects that maybe reduce, like, induce more efficient land use, even like
Mhm.
higher density. I guess could these values maybe have some bullets under them that kind of try to frame what we are, like maybe the supports natural environment could then be achieving carbon neutrality,
Yeah,
supporting efficient land use to increase density and
Yeah, we could,
like,
we don't have another TAC meeting until January, but in the meantime, we could, if people are generally supportive of these concepts over the next couple of months, we could send out our suggestions on how we're evaluating those.
Great, thank you. Next slide. So here is a timeline for internal project prioritization and identification for our region. So if you look over the next few months, like today in our TAC meeting, we're discussing the projects, we're discussing the scoring, we're developing a process, and we are asking our TAC members to provide feedback on your attachment, which names the projects of anything that's missing. We want to capture, because this is at the end of the day, we want to fund this stuff, right? So, and then in the next 3 months, Metro Plan and ADOT, basically Jeremy and I will work together to refine the list. So we have a list of 400 projects. And like Kate said, there's duplicates, there's projects that are already underway and things like that. So we want to come up with a really good list, and we're going to do that. And then with the previous slide with the projects, we'll score and prioritize them. We will bring you a refined list of projects in our January meeting, and y'all can advise on those. And then at our strategic advance, we will have an activity very similar to last year with strategic grants, where we will ID the projects in order of priority, so that then we can nominate a really good set of projects for the next round of P2P nominations to go into ADOT's capital budget for 3034. Any questions or glaring items on the timeline, or I'm happy to dialogue with you. All right, next slide. Now, sorry. Okay, now we are segueing into the second part of our discussion. So we understand, like, ADOT has a huge undertaking, taking the entire state of Arizona and all the roads and trying to thoughtfully and with methodology score projects. We understand that's a huge undertaking, and we want to give you kudos and credit for bumping up the modernization category with level of safety service. So LOSS is a way to predict crashes that's predictive rather than reactive. And we think that's really rad and awesome. And at the same time, we notice that the regional projects that are cited in certain plans aren't making it into the 5-year construction program. And what's unique about Flagstaff is that many of our core roads are owned by ADOT, and they have high injury and fatality rates. So we are seeking your counsel and dialogue into, like, do y'all also see this as a problem, and do you want us to spend time on it? So I'll give you a little more context. Next slide, please. So ADOT is on the verge of releasing the Active Transportation Safety Action Plan, where, as you can see, the state of Arizona, our region has identified 4 projects, and they're the two projects, 4 and 15, are categorized into high crash locations, and then projects that are labeled 16 through 26 are at high risk. So as you can see at a high level, our region has 4 projects that are outstanding in the safety arena. Next slide, please. This is a map that you can see is our high injury crash network, which is the smaller map in the corner. And then it's blown up to identify projects that have been cited in either the ATSAP, the Active Transportation Safety Action Plan, the Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment, and the Milton Bicycle Pedestrian roadway safety audit, just so you can look and see that these projects are indeed located in high crash areas and that are recommended by ADOT plans. Next slide, please. Real quick, so this is the modernization category of the planning to programming process where safety lives. So if you look at the green bar, you can look at how they're measuring safety, level of safety service, and then the performance targets and the work types. Let's study that for a second. And if ADOT has anything to add, please go ahead. So this is how currently safety is getting scored.
Modernization.
In the modernization category, thank you.
One category within that P2P process.
Right, there's so many, there's pavement preservation, there's bridge preservation, there's expansion. So right now we are indeed talking about modernization. So it's like a Russian nesting doll of data scoring. Okay, next slide, please. So the reason why we move this agenda item further up into this discussion is that this could potentially turn into a legislative item if the TAC thinks that this is a worthy use of Metro Plan staff time and resources. So we could work with ADOT to get our projects into their construction plan in a bunch of ways, right? We could advocate for plan alignment. Now, emphasizing that this is ADOT's process, they have their teams on it, and we're like a collaborator, right? So right now we're just talking here about, do y'all think this is a good use of our time? And the potential ways we could solve the safety projects that live in plans not making it into the capital budget through plan alignment, score ranking, or methodology. And do you think this is a problem? Do you want us to spend time on it? So this is the point where I would invite discussion around that.
So I will just add that this update or this conversation around updating scoring here is not a conversation at the district level, right? This is the entire P2P process. So that would be, multiple layers at the highest level of ADOT would be involved in that. So we're not, at this point, this isn't really like our coordination in the previous item, with district on the individual projects that we choose, that would largely be occurring at the district level. This is a slightly higher level discussion.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I'm sorry if you guys said it and I missed it. So then is this kind of is at that high level, there is an effort to get input on?
Yes, this is Sonia Katie Johar joined.
So is it like at the highest level open for discussion, or would we actually be bringing it to them for discussion, kind of like out of turn, for lack of a better word? Like we're seeing an area that needs improvement, so we're taking it to them. Okay. Thanks.
Because Jeremy's positing, so the previous discussion we just had about internal project prioritization, it's just our region and we're just prioritizing those projects. And what Jeremy's saying is if you change the whole thing, it is a statewide change. And that's kind of a big banana. So like right now we're working at the district level, and then to bring it up to the state level is like a whole other conversation. And thank you for acknowledging that. And we totally understand that. At the same time, it is an MPO's in our wheelhouse to look for plan alignment, because if y'all remember at our strategic advance, we do choose strategic goals and objectives every year, and we are tasked with bringing funding to the region, having implementable plans. Nobody likes to write a plan that never comes to fruition. And so it is kind of within our wheelhouse to be like, hey, look, these projects that are really important in the safety arena that are cited in these plans are not making it into the 5-year construction program. We understand there's limited resources, limited money, and we're all competing for some of the same funds, but it's still kind of our duty to bring this stuff up. So that's why we're bringing it to the conversation today. So who votes for the big banana? Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate Michelle's question because I think that helped. But yeah, I think to answer question 2, I think it'd be like, what is the interest from the North Central? I mean, do they support this discussion? If they don't, I think unfortunately it's a little bit of, not to say a waste of time, but I think
Heavy lift.
It's a heavy lift. And then if there is some support, then it could be worth getting support from the other COGs and MPOs. If they also agree that this is an issue in their, district, or that, and they also agree that there's changes to be made to the scoring criteria, then there's support on that level. So I think it's a little bit of like a tiered approach. And then if at least the other districts from ADOT would have support, then maybe there's like ideally this kind of voice going to the top. Where I think it's just better than just Metro all alone kind of fighting or, going
Yeah.
against the state to change, because it seems like a heavy lift. So I think it's just making sure there's support first between ADOT North Central and that Metro plan, and then, getting maybe other COGs and MPO support.
That's great. Thank you.
I love everything you just said, and I definitely am online with it. The question, is there ever a natural time that they open this up for public input? And like, could we be garnering that support and like in 2 years, they're gonna open it up? Or,
P2P's a continuous improvement kind of approach, right? I
Okay.
mean, Jason James is our P2P manager, and, he's always looking to do a better job with how we're scoring, prioritizing, and so on. So I think there's regular opportunity for the discussion.
thank you.
Hey. So Kate, so then do we put this on ice? Do we first like look at our internal projects and score them and see how that lands and then put this conversation kind of in the cooler? Like, is that what I'm hearing? Or do we like revisit, or do we just table it, or what do we do? Yes.
Is anybody in the room able to answer or somehow address Estella's question about if there's support at the district level?
There doesn't seem to be, but go ahead.
At this time, I mean, we haven't had we haven't gotten into any of the specifics of what exactly it is that we're proposing. But at this time, I don't think there's support at the district level to revisit the scoring. Okay.
Question onto that. I mean, if let's say Metro Plan got like letters of support from other COGs and MPOs or really making the case that why this is important, I mean, would that be helpful to start this conversation? Or I guess, is there anything that Metro Plan could be doing to help open up this conversation? It's hard to say.
Obviously, there's lots of nuance.
Yeah.
Like you saw that score, and there's a lot of different buckets there. And I think most of our previous conversations were around the district's part of that versus some of the other items. And, without knowing what the nature of those are, it's hard to comment on what those possibilities are. But like I said, I think, those conversations with Jason James as part of that P2P process are really the best part to place to start that conversation.
And I'll just reiterate, this is an initial, we haven't talked to other COGs and MPOs because we're coming to the TAC to say, is this a problem that we want to try to work on and solve? And so I think all the things you're mentioning would be next steps. I would see this as a multi-year process, right? Like this isn't, we've said, here are things that could possibly happen. We haven't vetted them. We haven't studied what the impacts would be. So this would be, I think, starting a much longer term conversation with the ultimate goal of trying to get more of those projects that we're seeing in plans specifically related to safety approved in the 5-year construction budget. I don't think any of the modernization money this year was in the Metro Plan region, if I remember correctly. So 0 in modernization, 0 in expansion.
Okay. Thank you for the discussion. Any last comments before we move on?
Do you have the direction you need from TAC?
What?
Do you have the direction you need from TAC or?
I guess this is what I'm hearing. Let me like practice my active listening. So this is changing the P2P process is a statewide undertaking. It is a heavy lift. If we're starting with our colleagues at the North Central District, it's a no for now. That's what I'm hearing. It's a no for now, and I'm hearing the advice is let's work on our discrete projects and our scoring and get real strategic about what we're nominating and see how that goes. That's what I'm hearing. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I think if I could add to that, maybe it's worth Metro Plan staff reaching out to our other MPOs and COGs and seeing if there's that support. And that, you know, if this could be more of a joint effort and if they're also, and seeing if there's kind of that in numbers too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hey. Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna return to item previously known as 3, now 4. Consider the legislative agenda.
Now we're gonna
Okay, that's me again. Thank you so much, Chair McNulty. So this is this one is actually for action. We would like to see if you agree with our legislative agenda. And after this presentation, we would like for you to consider recommending it to our board of directors. So why set a legislative agenda? So one of our strategic objectives is to really align our partners' legislative interests to maximize funding and really get everyone on the same page. This maintains focus and leads to results. The way that we do this as Metro Plan is we educate legislators on the importance of regional projects through meeting with them, through writing letters, through passing board resolutions, and through fund seeking. And sometimes that looks like nominating projects on the RTAC bill, the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, and congressionally directed spending. So those are the reasons why we set a legislative agenda every year. Next slide, please. So we are coming to you for advice and recommendation. These are our proposed state priorities. So we'll have proposed state priorities and we'll have proposed federal priorities. The first one is educating our legislators on the benefits of the RTAC bill. So this is the Greater Arizona Funding Initiative for as a region and also discrete projects. So the city has their Lone Tree Overpass Improvement Project. The county has their US 89 and Burris Roundabout Project. And Mountain Line is seeking funding for 2 match opportunities for their bus maintenance facility and for 4 new electric buses. So that's the first priority. The second one is to continue searching for long-term funding solutions. We know that there are not enough infrastructure dollars, so we want to maximize those and continue fund seeking. The third one is, okay, so this one, per our previous discussion, work with ADOT to prioritize safety projects. I can reword this one to talk about our internal scoring process for more strategic nominations and remove that statewide implication. I can do that. The fourth one is educating our legislators on the power of the SMART Fund. The SMART Fund is amazing. It's been a real boon for small jurisdictions and rural jurisdictions. And so we're really looking to educate legislators on the benefits of maintaining the SMART Fund and keeping it funded. The fifth strategy is to develop local transportation assistance fund. The LTAF2 is something that used to happen in the state of Arizona as a whole to take lottery revenue to fund transit. And in 2010, because of budget issues, then Governor Brewer took the funds away. Maricopa County sued. They got to keep their transit money and everybody else lost it. So a state priority to really I want to say resurrect, but that's a weird word. Reinstate LTAF2 funding. Okay, 2, 4, 5, 6. The sixth one is continue to develop research on creative local match opportunities. We all know that federal grants ask us to match at 20% most of the time, and we really want to dig into tax increment financing and developer impact fees. So at this time, I would like to ask the TAC, do you see anything missing? Do you want anything changed aside from the third one that I just talked about the P2P? Is there anything missing? Are you good with these items? Our state legislative agenda for fiscal year 25. Okay, next slide, please. And we'll move on to federal priorities. So there's 4. So the BIL and the IIJA, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act have been really beneficial to infrastructure projects. So we would like to support the reauthorization of and sustain funding levels for that bill. We want to continue supporting funding for discretionary grants at the federal level. We've been successful in that. We want to continue doing that. We want to support the effort to modernize car safety ratings to consider vulnerable users. And lastly, we want to support funding for long distance Amtrak routes. Does anybody have anything to add or change to the federal priorities? The proposed federal priority? Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, now we have an action, Chair McNulty.
Okay. So I think the motion would be to recommend the TAC consider recommending the board adopt the proposed legislative agenda except for the portion about working with legislature about the P2P.
Yes. I can get it.
About, we're still keeping the prioritization of projects, just not the,
The scoring, the
change to
ADOT scoring process.
Thank you. Okay, clarify.
So then let me re-ask this. So if we just adopt it as proposed, is that okay? Or do we need to be specific about excluding the modernization? I don't think it was in there. I think it was just still working on the P2P.
Sandra, is this verbatim within the staff report, the bullet on the slide?
I think so.
Because as written, it really is just about the prioritization of projects and doesn't really get into the P2P scoring, so it could be okay.
Okay, I could, do you want me to pop in or to the staff report? I do not remember.
I can read it.
I had a question. Yeah.
Make sure that line matches what you want your action to be.
Oh, read it? Okay, work.
Teamwork.
Work with ADOT to revisit and redesign the P2P safety scoring methodology to include state, regional, and local plan alignment. So is that what it says?
So no, that's not, they're different.
Yeah, I think we'd want to make it more like what was on the slide and not what's in the staff report.
Yes.
And then Jeff, did you have a question?
Well, the staff report has several more bullets than was in the presentation, which is fine. Okay. You were focusing on the slides and there's a bunch more in the staff report that we didn't talk about. I don't have any problems with any of them, but just that people recognize that.
My guess is they're supposed to be removed.
What's in the staff report?
Are these, are your bullets inclusive of all the final ones we came up with?
I believe so. And Jeff, when you say that there's more on the staff report, do you mean there's more on the legislative staff report? Or more in the ADOT P2P piece of the staff report? Or can you be more specific?
That's on state priorities. There's more bullets on federal priorities that you didn't cover in the presentation,
Okay.
which I thought was okay. But then when you started focusing on what the presentation said, I was like, oh, wait a second, the presentation's different than the staff report.
I wonder if when the edits were made, they were made to the executive board staff report and not the TAC one.
Perhaps. So how do we redress that without taking up a ton of this, like, how do I fix that? How do I fix that?
Do you know if the slides match what's in the board report?
I do not. Okay.
Okay, so then I think we could say what's on the slides is what we want to adopt.
Okay, so
From exact wording before.
So I guess Chair McNulty, what you are asking the TAC to make a motion of is the priorities that are cited on the slides and not in the staff report. Is that correct? I'm so sorry. I apologize.
What if you like some of the ones that are in?
You like some Heather revised them. That's what's changed.
Okay.
But I will say what's different is we did get feedback from Mountain Line CEO on some of the transit related ones. And she removed and revised some of them. So I think I think we must have captured those in the executive board report and not the TAC report, is my guess.
I'll follow Heather's.
They were due like back to back.
No, it's fine. They were, the one that caught my eye was this electric rates, and that was interesting. I thought maybe we'd talk about it.
We can certainly
It's
talk
not a
about
thing
it.
anymore.
Well, it can be though.
No, I was just curious.
I don't want to
I thought it
leave
was
off
public
transit
law.
off of our legislative priorities because it's such a major partner. Like, I don't want to do that.
But if Heather's reviewed and, I mean, again, I follow her lead. So if she reviewed and she's happy.
Being that I am not looking at the staff reports and doing the presentation, I cannot pull them up at the moment. I think it would be wise if the TAC took action on what is in the TAC report, and then we can make modifications for the board as needed. So if you like what's in there, if you want to discuss what's in there, and then we can reconcile with the board before they approve it. Yeah. So if you want to ask about electric rates, the challenge with electric rates is the way the mountain line system works is all the buses pull into the DCC at the same time and leave at the same time, hitting mountain line with, once they have electric buses, it will hit them with massive demand charges. And they have to also charge during peak hour. And so while they're not, if they were outside of those two rate structures, their electricity rates would be 1/3 lower, I believe. But being that they have these big demand, that they're predicting these big demand charges and big peak hour charges, they'd like to find a way to have the ACC, the Corporation Commission, create a new rate structure.
The board is the updated, the TAC is prior to Heather's updates. Confirmed.
Is it what's on the slide? That's the question.
They're a third version.
Is there a third version? There's at least 5 stuff. You never know how many.
It's my bad. I was following along the staff report.
Well, this is
For the
good.
next slide.
That's why we have a TAC. Thank you for, maybe you can sit with me while I make my slides for the next time. JK. Yeah, so in this arena, how do we have accuracy and move the item forward?
It's just pulling up.
Let's have the TAC take action based upon what's in your staff report, and then we can have any revisions or discussion with the board.
Do you want me to read the ones then that
That aren't there. They're sure.
are on the slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
So continue developing research was the last one.
Yeah.
So the next one was make the case for the state of Arizona to make reoccurring funding available that can be used by transit across the state to draw down and keep federal funding in Arizona.
And that is on the board.
Oh, okay.
That is on the board report. Okay. Go ahead.
But not there. All right. Advocate, we just talked about this one
And that's on the board.
for the electric rates. Okay, so that one's still in. Collaborate with other transit agencies across the state.
That is on the board.
Okay. So they match. That's the staff report.
Something matches.
I think we want to recommend approval based on the staff report.
With the change of the P2P one to what's on the slide.
Okay.
Instead of
Okay,
the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you give me an exact wording for the accept portion of the recommendation?
So we recommend the board adopt the proposed legislative agenda as identified in the staff report with the exception of modifying the specific task to modify the scoring as it relates to modernization.
Nice.
At the state level. Yeah.
Okay, we got that.
You want to go through the federal ones too to make sure? I think they were different. So support reauthorization, support funding, support the effort to monitor, support funding, long distance Amtrak. Ensure, this is a new one, ensure annual transit appropriations match authorized levels. That one, is that one we should talk about? Is that in the?
That one, Heather is supportive of that one. That one is just ensuring that the annual budget process provides as much money for transit as is authorized in the infrastructure bill.
And Congress needs to honor these levels.
That's what it says. It's true.
It does.
It's true, they do.
So would you like me to read this back or are you okay with gotten it correct?
We can review the,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna repeat the motion, but
We did a
And that
good
was made
job.
by.
I'd like to get a first and a second on that. I need somebody to
So
move
moved.
it.
You okay with the so moved?
I'm okay with the so moved. Can I get a so second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking. All right. Consider election of a chair and a vice chair for Metropolitan Technical Advisory Committee. No, Karen,
Thank you.
slash Kim.
Good afternoon, TAC and Madam Chair. We would like today to bring to you the need to elect a chair and vice chair for the term of January 1, 2025 to January 31, 2025. The bylaws state that the Technical Advisory Committee Chair and Vice Chair can serve unlimited number of terms, however, they must be elected each year. And so we are going with the calendar year. So we'd like to begin with the chair. Is there someone who would like to volunteer to have their name put in the pool? Or is there anyone who would like to nominate someone for the chair?
Val, are you?
I wanted to step down. I'm willing to serve for another year, but I also, if somebody else would like to step into the role, I'm happy to step down. So I'd like to just put that out there. I should have started with that, but I'm like, if somebody just wants to volunteer.
Are you nominating her?
Do I not make it look that appealing?
I'll second that.
Just a minute.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'm chair. I'm just, so.
And then we'll move on to vice chair at this time. And it is known that Vice Chair Reisner has agreed that if no one else is willing to step up, he would serve again. However, if someone wants that position, he would gladly relinquish his position. Is there any discussion on that?
Nominate Nate.
I'll second.
This is like, oh, sure. Crickets. All those in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, Nate's continues to be vice chair. Okay. Transportation demand management update, Kim.
Hi. Okay. So I just wanted to give, thank you, Chair and new Chair and members of the TAC. I just wanted to provide an update from the TDM program of MetroPlan. We are very pleased to announce that we have signed a contract for another year with our AmeriCorps fellow, Aubrey Fellows, Flores. Wow, okay. So she will be with us for probably until May of 2025. And we're really excited with that. In addition, last month, the National AmeriCorps came to Flagstaff and had a site visit at NAU. And they highlighted the Cheshire Asphalt Art Project. So Aubrey did a really nice presentation about the project and about a TDM program in general and how it aligns with their climate core values. And they were very pleased. And so we're continuing our relationship with AmeriCorps. Safer People campaign. Over the summer, we opened an RFP process. And last month, our executive board approved a contract with the Mountain Mojo Group. And this Safer People campaign aligns with the Safer Systems approach. And that includes safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, post-crash care, and safe road users. And so we are beginning our we'll be making a list and kind of determining our priorities with that shortly. And then lastly, a Safe Routes to School update. As a reminder, the Safe Routes is based on the 6 E's, including education, encouragement, equity, engineering, engagement. Did I say education? What's that last one? I can't read it. I always miss one. Equity, but I'm gonna have to, it's yellow. What's the yellow one say? I can't read it.
Education.
Education.
Oh, evaluation. I was reading that one. Okay. And let me announce our Safe Routes to School coordinator, Corey Cooper. There it is, Corey.
Hello, thank you, Kim.
Sorry. So Corey has been really stepping up to the plate, running the Safe Routes to School TA infrastructure project. And last month, the city of Flagstaff, or our board, approved an IGA between the city of Flagstaff and Metro Plan. And we did also recently open up an RFQ process for the infrastructure portion of this grant. So I'll keep you updated as that proceeds. On the non-infrastructure side, Corey has been out at schools making contacts. He's been working on school observations at drop-off and pickup, trying to get it in before the weather changes. And so we've been looking at, how many kids are being dropped off every day, and how they're being dropped off, are any walking and biking, and all that data for all the schools, and see if we can come up with a plan to start decreasing traffic and congestion and single vehicle trips. And that is it. Mine was a discussion only and an update. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Hey, no questions. You did such a good job. Thanks. All right, we have the fiscal year 2024 year-end financial report. Hey.
Great. This is just a quick update to keep the TAC informed of where we ended the fiscal year. We underspent in both salaries and employee-related expenses and operating. The salaries piece was due to the delays in hiring our TDM planner and our Safe Routes to School coordinator. And then operating expenses was largely due to savings in IT expenses. Travel, we actually overspent in travel. That was because we had an opportunity to take board members and TAC members and staff to the National Association of Transportation Officials, but that was offset by a grant opportunity that we had, and really tied into our transit and the code activities. And then our projects category was underspent. These projects are all ongoing. That money will just carry forward into FY25. We didn't spend as quickly as we thought on West Route 66, the downtown mile, some of those projects. So in the end, this is the pie chart of how the four categories come out. Typically, the salaries and the projects percentages are reversed, but because we were behind in projects, we did not spend as much as we anticipated there. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Moving on, we have the West Route 66 operational assessment update. Mandia.
Excellent, thank you. Try to keep this brief, but I wanted to start off with just reviewing the project schedule so you all know where we're at in this planning process. And then I'll go into some of the updates on what the project advisory group has been working on, or PAG, as you will hear me refer to them. So looking at this schedule, we're more than halfway through this assessment. We have the list of completed deliverables on the left. Those are informing our alternative development and assessments as task 5. And those two items bolded, number 4 and number 5, those will be in more discussion here shortly. Next slide. So the last time that we met, which I understand was a little while ago, we did discuss the development of a policy-based criteria. And as part of that, the development of that criterion, our next step was to move into methodology for scoring or weighting the system to rank those future transportation solutions in the corridor. So a survey was requested by our PAG members to better inform their individual responses to a very similar survey. And so this survey's intent was to understand not only the community's concerns along the corridor, but it also asked questions related to those policy-based criteria that we had out there. And so we had 119 folks participate. And as you see, we had a lot of folks who either live, work, or regularly use West Route 66 participate in that survey. Next. Oh, yes.
Were you able to answer multiple on that one? Because the response is.
Yes, yeah, you can select, yeah, select all,
okay.
yeah. Yes. We figured people probably use it for a lot of things.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so out of those 119 participants, we got 157 comments. And some of these were related to the criteria and our policy-based principles. But of course, as you see up there, some people specifically called out infrastructure recommendations, and then there was 20% of those comments related to bike and ped improvements in infrastructure along the corridor. Got both both positive and negative sentiments from folks. Surprisingly, in the positive, a lot of folks, at least who answered this survey, felt that, you know, it wasn't as congested as, I think they said, avoid Milton. You know, it was easy access to I-40. A lot of folks mentioned that they really liked the suburban feel, the access to businesses, and as you obviously head further west, that open space that's out there. Negative sentiments, I don't think any of these are a surprise to us, and a lot of these, you know, pair well with the data that we have. You know, the need for more bus stops and transit, the lack of sidewalks and bike infrastructure, yielding issues to pedestrians at crossings. I will point out that the intersections of Thompson and Northwestern were cited quite a bit as well. So that gives you kind of an overview of what we heard from the comment, and then we'll go to the next slide. Great. All right, so prior to that survey going out, the PAG had agreed to these 4 policy categories. So the broad policies, operations, elevated bike and ped, and cost effectiveness. And then under those, we have the sub-criteria. So the weights listed here are the final and approved by the project advisory group. We did have a robust conversation with the PAG when we first got these results in, because there was some divergence in some of the scoring. So we wanted to make sure that we were all, you know, in agreement, in consensus with moving these numbers forward. So we made some minor adjustments along the way, but this is how we're moving forward with this process. And then I'm not going to go through all this, but it's a really good graphic. So here's just an example. Oh, go ahead. Just an example of our evaluation process. We'll be taking that data and moving it into that cone. And then that, sorry, you took it away, Kate. It's like, what does it say up there? I'm like, yeah. So we'll take that raw data, those numbers, normalize it. Then we apply that criteria numbers and then that policy weight as well. And then we'll come out the end with a final score, with 100 being the highest score, which would be the best solution. Okay, next slide.
And really
yes.
quickly, I just want to note that Commissioner McNeely had to leave, and so
Oh, yes,
he's no
right.
longer, okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Great. So this is item 2 for the PAG. We just completed the first round of looking at the regional plan and those 5 scenarios, A through E, along with some transportation solutions, those are listed on the right. And those transportation solutions were developed with the PAG. And really, this is to move us into tier 1 of a 4-tier evaluation process, which I'll get to that too in just a second. So this is just tier 1, and this is really just for us to explore the differences between the variety of solutions and the land uses. And then the ultimate goal is to reduce the things that don't work or that are unfeasible. So there's obviously some of the regional plan scenarios that are just never going to happen for various reasons. So next slide. So here's some of the output. The different data that we're getting. So at the top row, you'll see the transportation solutions. Obviously, this is for scenario E. You know, we looked at everything at level service, VMT, all that good stuff to help inform our decisions moving forward. So we have a lot of those spreadsheets for all of these solutions. And then here's just kind of the overview of the 4-step modeling process. As I said, we are in tier 1. And our goal at our last PAG meeting was to reduce, once again, some of those regional plan scenarios that were not feasible. And we were able to bring that down. And then upon further talk with Sarah Dector and Steph Santana, I believe we're moving into just using E as our baseline and then E plus 35%, just so we can have that comparison of if it were to grow bigger than we expected, what would that look like? So that, since we reduced so many, we actually can skip tier 2 and move into tier 3. But we're going to have that conversation with the PAG at our next meeting coming up October 20 something. I was going to look at my PAG numbers. So we'll have that somewhere in there. So we'll have that discussion with the full PAG, make sure once again that we're in consensus for moving these forward, so we can look at it in that larger model and then pass it on to NAU for micro simulation. And next slide. All right, the last thing that I've been working on, this one's kind of been outside of the PAG a little bit, been working with our engineering partners here. As part of the scope of work, we were asked to get this project to 15% design, and that brings us to a basis of design document. And so been working obviously with engineering staff. We have 2 columns there. We have ADOT standards and then and flag staff standards. And we're using this to see where we align and then where we don't align. So this isn't quite going to be used yet. It'll be used a little bit further in once we get a little bit further down in that tiered analysis. But it allows us to have conversations with the respective agencies, like, if this is X is really important, is there any flexibility? And what does that flexibility look like? Or do we have to have broader conversations of roadway ownership, roadway maintenance, who cost all that stuff? So we'll be bringing this to the PAG at a later time once we get, fleshed out through those tiers. And I believe that was it. Yes. So take any questions, comments? Yes.
One question. Well, one, you've been doing a great job. I sit on the PAG. So yeah, appreciate the process. When you said scenario E plus 35%, is that increasing 35% number of trips or assumption 35% more population?
It's a growth rate.
So number of people.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yes. Yeah, yes. But yeah, we'll get into that more at our next meeting. Great. Anything else? All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, final report on Bloomberg Cheshire Slow Street Asphalt Art Project. Kim.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, TAC. Okay, so I'm here to present the final report on the Cheshire Asphalt Art Project. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder, Metroplan was awarded the Bloomberg grant in 2023 of November of 2023. The project was completed in May of 2024. And the City of Flagstaff conducted a traffic study in July of 2024. And they also presented to the Traffic Commission last month. And I wanted to let everyone know that our Flagstaff project is on the Bloomberg website, the national website. And I have a link. Should we do it? Do we have time? Should we not?
I don't think at the end.
Okay, we'll do it at the end. You can do it at the end. Okay, so next slide. I wanted to present the results of the speed study. Basically, with the left side of the slide are the vehicles that were traveling above 30 miles per hour. And as you can see by the green, those vehicle speeds did go down, as well as the right side of the slide, the vehicles traveling above 35 miles an hour, those vehicles speeds, the number percentage also went down as well. Did I say that right? Oh, okay. Also, the Metro Plan released a survey to the community, and we wanted to ask the perceived safety of the people who use the road. And as far as speeding, the people felt more safe after the new roadway design versus before. And then as far as the crosswalk, they also felt safer using the crosswalk after the new design of the roadway, which is in alignment because at the crosswalk, we reduced the lanes of traffic with the duck. Sorry, we did. Okay, next slide. Here are some photos taken by city staff. And the June photos look kind of gnarly, but we decided that the rains hadn't come yet. And so then, because then July looks really good. So we think there was just dust and stuff on the road. But MetroPlan will continue to take pictures and document and study the artwork itself at 6, 9, and 12 months. And just a reminder, this project is temporary, so it is going to fade. We just don't know how fast. Okay, next slide. In addition to, included in that community survey, which we did receive about 136 responses, we did ask a question if there was support for having the art remain longer on the roadway, such as 1 to 2 years. And obviously 60% said yes. And then next slide, we also asked the community if they would be interested in seeing other demonstration projects within the community. And again, they said yes. So hopefully we can find some exciting projects to do quickly, temporary. Okay, and I think, yes, I think that's it. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments, or we can check that off the list.
It's just going to fade away. Are there any plans at some point to obscure it or fog coat it or something when it reaches kind of end of life, or will it?
Well, right now it is protected by delineators. So, but I believe right now the city is trying to decide how the roadway is going to look. And if they also are planning to look at the full roadway. This is just a small portion, but really Fremont as it continues all the way to Peakview. Because I think what city mentioned is that they slow down where the road narrows and then it opens back up again and then they start speeding again. So I think the city is just looking for just how to take care of all of it. And so Traffic Commission is okay leaving it on for a while, giving city staff time to figure that out. And we did not use primer and we did not use sealer, but we did do 2 coats. So I don't know how long it's going to last.
Great, thank you. All right, vulnerable road user safety action plan update, Mandia.
Excellent. Thank you, Chairman Nolte. All right, so go ahead and jump in the slides there. It's been a long time since we've given you an update on this. I think the last was just working through the scope and work plan and such. So I just wanted to start off with some reminders about this project. This is an SS4A awarded project that was awarded specifically to Metro Plan. We will be conducting this vulnerable road user safety plan in-house. It will establish our Vision Zero commitment for Metro Plan itself. Once again, provides policy recommendations to prioritize safety, as we already started some of those conversations. Once again, this will be specific to Metro Plan. We're looking to identify both programs and projects with that focus on a 2 to 5 year implementation plan. As you're very aware, there's a lot of other safety plans out there that has already identified those large infrastructure projects. So we're looking at ways that we can find low cost solutions with high impacts. That has 2 good things that happens with it. Thinking of it more like a pilot project, it gives the community something on the ground right away that hopefully, impacts their safety in a good way. Additionally, it gives, I think, engineering and staff the opportunity to get feedback from the community. Is this actually working? Is it not? Where's it failing, et cetera? And for Sandra, it helps with the grant process. A lot of these new safety grants really value the community input prior to applying for a grant. So showing that we attempted something and we want to adjust it could certainly set us up for permanent infrastructure funding for those. We are going to consolidate the transportation safety projects that have been out of the most recent transportation safety plans. You already saw part of that through the map that Sandra showed you earlier with the specific ADOT projects. And that's really to see where there's efficiencies as we begin to look at projects in a more holistic way, where are, things already identified and how can we come together around those. And then provide, once again, supporting the other safety plans that are happening at the same time, which I'll get to those as well in a minute. All right, so here's our schedule. We kind of had a slow start to go fast. So right now we're in the data collection and analyzing portion of the project. We've been really good at getting both ADOT and city data. So thank you to everybody's staff for supporting us through this process. And it was just a matter of cleaning up to be able to work on that analysis. We do plan to have the final plan completed and adopted, I should say, in June of 2025. Thank you. Since we last talked and you all helped to develop the scope and schedule, there have been a couple of changes. The schedule has been extended by 3 months. This was to accommodate the procurement process, specifically for the risk exposure assessment. That's just one small component that we wanted to include in this project that was outside of the rest of the planning efforts that are being done internally. We did receive 2 proposals, very qualified, consulting firms. However, their requests costs were beyond our available funding. So we decided to go ahead and move this process in-house. And it will certainly be something new for us, a learning experience. We're looking forward to getting our hands dirty with it. We have found guidance from FHWA on how to score and work through these exposure assessments. In addition, the Indianapolis MPO has also completed their scoring system. So we've been working with them to get information on their methodology and figure out if it's applicable to our community as well. Yes. All the other plans. We got a lot going on right now. So a lot of these are safety, related. We have the Safe Streets Master Plan, Safe Routes to School infrastructure, and of course, internally our TDM and Safe Routes to School programs. So we've started trying to coordinate all of us together just to find those efficiencies between what we're all working on. We can share knowledge and data, have this holistic approach to transportation safety in the region. An example of one of those efficiencies, working with Carlton and Corey on developing the Safe Routes to School infrastructure RFP. There were a lot of questions about what outreach are we doing in the VRU, because we do plan to be on 4th and Cedar to support one of those school projects on 4th and Cedar. So what information can I gain to share with them that would also, help them with their process? So we're looking for ways, once again, be efficient, move everything forward. Next slide. All right. So, like I said, went slow to go fast. We just put out the public involvement plan. Just as a reminder, we consider all of our public involvment plans, living documents. So it is expected to morph over time as things tend to change. Because we're already so many transportation safety plans conducted, and there's already a lot of robust community feedback. We really want to take this opportunity to focus on working with local organizations, specifically those that are like service agencies that help folks with disability, the unsheltered, and target seniors and students as well. And really with that focus on in these groups, who really relies on non-motorized modes for daily travel. And what we're trying to do is really learn about their lived experiences and then pair that with the not only crash data that we have, but the other data that we've received from the community through like the regional transportation safety plan. All right, so this ties into our public outreach. So we are going to focus not only on those specific demographics, but we also want to focus within equity areas. So let me explain this map here. So first off, the dots and triangles are crashes, one's for pedestrians, one's for cyclists. The colored census blocks, this is an equity map that was produced by ADOT for their VRU safety plan. And essentially what it is they scored, let me make sure I have all of these in here. Okay. They scored each of the census blocks across the state and gave them a number. And they used the Justice 40 tool, so social vulnerability index, EJ screen, and the equity needs analysis through census data to create this composite score for census blocks. So the higher the score, the more equity issues are related to those. And the state score goes from, 0 to 20. So our highest in our region is 14. So an effort to, be efficient and concise with who we're targeting, we will more than likely be in Sunnyside and the South Side to target those areas with our public outreach. So that's just kind of an example of, hey, we're using existing tools, which is great, got more efficiencies there, but also allows us to visually, see where we need to target in relation to not only equity, but crashes as well. And then here's just a little micro example of some of the other items we're looking at. Because we are targeting specific groups, we want to look at what's happening around them. So on the left is Sunshine Mission that supports the unhoused. So this gives us a sense of, how people are or what's happening around these areas that could impact people getting to these services. Additionally, folding into Safe Routes to School, we also have our school crashes as well for all of the FUSD areas. And once again, kind of the same thing, give us an idea of what's happening around these schools and what impacts they might have on the folks that are using those corridors to reach either institutes or services. And that is the end of my update. See if there's any questions or concerns or comments, I should say, or concerns. Yes.
Two comments. One, so I think it was like a year or two ago where MetroPlan, you put out like where people could add dots of like where they felt safe.
Yes.
Is that's being included in this?
Yes, it is. And actually, I took that slide out. I was trying to shorten it. No, it's a really interesting one. So just for those who do not remember it, as part of the Regional Transportation Safety Plan, we had an online platform called Social Pinpoint. And so people could tell us that they're responding as a driver, a walker, or bicyclist and drop a pin on the map and leave a comment of what their safety concern or issues are or observations in those areas. So we've actually taken those public comments and laid them over our updated crash data and really starting to look at those as like, hey, are there public perceptions of this area that's matching like what's actually happening in these areas? Or are there things that maybe folks are seeing that we're not catching in the data? So just kind of gives us a little sense of, what's going on there. But yes, we are using that year-old comments, yes.
And the food for thought, you don't have to answer now, but if it would be useful to provide high ridership transit stops, because there's just more pedestrian activity, more people waiting, so.
That is actually on our list, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any other comments or questions. We're gonna move on to the trip diary survey update. And Kate, you were gonna cover for Mr. Wessel.
Yeah, so just a quick update. This is happening now. People have received invites in the mail, and we are working to sign people up by phone to get to a target of 400 people participating in the trip diary process. That is a survey we do every 6 years. It provides us information over time about the modes people are using, but also their trip purposes, destinations, information that we can't just get when we put traffic counters out. We did hire West Group, the board approved a contract with them last month, and so they are underway. And as I said, they'll pick up the phone and start calling people to try to get to 400 this month. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but your next TAC meeting, we should have results of how the survey went.
Okay, I don't see any questions or comments. So we will move on to the key performance indicators.
Yes, and on this one, just in the name of time, the key performance indicators we bring to you quarterly. They're in your packet. If you have any questions, this is the report out on the end of fiscal year 24. I think we'd be happy to answer any questions about any of the KPIs.
Okay, thanks. All right, moving on to micro mobility share program update, Kim.
Okay, thank you. And this item is just a discussion, and I'm starting a conversation. So next slide, please. Why am I starting this conversation now? Well, micromobility, which let me explain that if you don't know, there's electric bikes, there's electric scooters, and there's other, which are like the one wheels and those Segway things that go between your legs and all sorts of skateboards, all sorts of other things. So micromobility share programs, they contribute to climate action goals by offering cleaner transportation alternatives, reducing reliance on personal vehicles, and supporting broader sustainable initiatives. And obviously that's in alignment with the TDM program. In addition, micromobility share programs are listed in Stride Forward, Regional Plan 2020, the Carbon Neutrality Plan, and the Active Transportation Master Plan. Micromobility, especially e-scooters, are an important alternative for the first mile, last mile to transit stops, which is really important. They help decrease congestion in traffic, and they offer alternative transportation choices to those who may have limited transportation. A short little background on the city has had a few of these in the past briefly. There was SPIN in 2018, the Gotcha program in 2019, 2020. Also, something that we will get to in a little bit, some other potential discussions would be permit requirements and sign codes. And in the past, only electric bicycles were offered. So when we're having this discussion, we're including e-scooters and e-bicycles. Okay, next slide. So to have a micromobility share program, there's two essential ways that we could approach this. So I kind of made a table and listed them for you. One is through an RFP process, which is what has been done in the past. And the other one is sort of a free market approach. So I'm just going to go through the comparison and just compare the two. So in an RFP process, it's usually one contract and one company is chosen, and that would be like SPIN. And so obviously there isn't any competition. It allows more control over that, but potentially maybe some increased liability. But there are set limitations within that contract. So there's that. The free market approach, basically you'd set some specific guidelines and permitting processes, and then if any company comes in and they can meet those permit requirements, then they can come and bring their product, and if they fail, it's their fault. Sorry. Think or swim. No, I'm just kidding. It provides opportunities for multiple companies to come into town. There is less control over those companies, but potentially less liability. And then obviously you can set those guidelines through permitting, code compliance, and those kinds of things. Next slide, please. Keeping the comparison going, In an RFP, if we're talking about equity, with an RFP process, though, you could set in the contract where the devices are moved to the places where they need to be, maybe those where they might have some equity challenges or whatever. But potentially if the city, I want to say ownership, it's the RFP and they control the contract. So if that fails, it may look bad on the city. I'm not sure, but potentially also cost more staff time to run that program. And again, the spin and gotcha. And I will say spin was considered a success. It was only, it only happened for 6 months, but in those 6 months, there were 11,000 trips taken on electric bicycles. So that was definitely, gotcha, COVID happened. So I don't have any data on gotcha. I apologize. Okay, so a free market approach. You could set those guidelines with the permit process. You could offer, rather than move the devices to the places, you could offer free or subsidized rides. There's a little more separation between the city agencies and the private companies. So the responsibility is more on the company rather than the city. Less staff time. Tucson does this free market approach with their micro mobility share. Their permit process is 12 pages long, but if a company can't meet those requirements, they don't get to get a permit. Okay, next slide. So just some thoughts on risks and equity. Parking. These devices would be dockless. That risk can be mitigated by the permit or contracting approach. Either way, it goes both, right? Parking is just an issue. But you can use geofencing and have specific guidelines of where those parking spots are located. Broken bikes, right? If the city took on an RFP process, then they have a little bit more control on the broken bike part. But again, if the company doesn't address issues, no one's going to use their product, so they would fail. So, and then of course a risk would be future micromobility share programs if the city went with an RFP process and it failed. Equity, right? We already talked about the equitable distribution of the devices and those kind of geofencing and all that kind of stuff. I will say, I've been doing some research and the city of Austin did go through this process. And in this risks and equity piece, what they did is they updated their traffic and sidewalk ordinances, and they made sure that everything was ADA compliant. In that, they had designated parking specifically for, and it was on the roadway, it wasn't on the sidewalk, and that the devices had to be docked upright. They used geofencing and to kind of control where they could go. They put parking places near a transit stop to encourage that first mile, last mile piece, and in areas of commerce or highly used areas. They also wanted to make sure that their public outreach, so they had like micromobility talks at like coffee shops and stuff, but they also created a dashboard and you could see, you could complain, but you could also, you know, see where they're being used and all that kind of stuff. And then as far as enforcement in the code compliance realm, they used a warn and inform rather than click it or ticket, but that's not click it or ticket. So anyway, next slide. I think that's it. I could be wrong. Oh, okay. So with that, I'm opening the table for discussion. And Jenny Neiman is on the meeting in case anyone has any questions that I cannot answer.
Is it? Jenny, I'm curious, have you taken this to Euro? Or is Euro aware of this conversation?
We have not taken this anywhere. This
Okay.
is really the first conversation that we're having, and we really wanted to take it to the TAC Metro Plan. Wanted to introduce the concept, and I'll let Metro Plan speak to it. But we are really just at this very, very early stages. The city has in its code things that actively keep companies out of the market. And so we need to address it in some way or another. And so we really wanted to just start this conversation, and Metro Plan wanted to start the conversation of talking about this as a transportation option. So we have not taken it to really anybody within the city at this moment, besides Chris Fair and Martin have been working on this. And so we will get to lots and lots of people that we'll be talking to, but wanted to start the conversation here.
And I ask that because I'm currently working on a parklet ordinance, and so Euro, for people who are outside of the city, it's extended use of right of way, and it was established kind of probably in 2019. I wasn't here yet, but it's a result of COVID, and specifically restaurants who wanted to move and out onto the street. And so I only say that, and I think that's probably would be one of my recommendations that's going to come out of this, is I think we get to them really quickly, because just trying to write that ordinance just for parklets and who maintains it and the permitting, well, I inherited it. And so it started like 2 years before I got here, and I've been here for 2.5, and it's quite the process. And their whole mission is that extended use and activating of the right of way and curb space. So because I think there's, Park Flag, there's so many other people who really need to get buy-in before we even move this. And just working through the parklets, I can tell you, it's gonna be a huge challenge. Not that I'm just not against it, this is going to take a heavy lift.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, just to add on, I think we wanted to start the discussion here because it's really hard to prevent a scooter from going onto an ADOT right of way or maybe onto mountain line buses. And so I understand that there would be many, many next steps involved. But we felt like we needed a conversation at this level before we really dove into the nitty gritty of how to. I think it's more looking for, support, pursuing something, any big factors you would want us to research and discuss at this stage.
And I appreciate that, but I think that Euro group is also gonna be where you're gonna find their support. Because it's gonna take city staff to write a lot of this and to remove those barriers. And if they don't support it, then we're not going to, right, like the next step. So I think they're also important to get the support before doing the next steps.
No, I understand that. I wouldn't take it to them if this group didn't support.
I appreciate that.
Can I ask a question? Is there any feedback on the different approaches? Does anyone have any thoughts on one versus the other? I was curious about that.
Or just something to add, I don't have a strong opinion between one or the other, but I think the micromobility landscape is very different than it was in 2018. Then there was like a dozen companies just dropping scooters. It's very different now. It's really like Lime and Lyft are like the two main players. Bird is bankrupt and, leaving city. So I think it's just, I guess when it's a free market, I don't want people to think like, oh, well, then all these companies are going to come to Flag, because I don't think that'll be the case. It really might be just two main players. So just wanted to add that.
I think that's good, because I've been in cities where it has just been a total cluster monkey, and it's like, oh my gosh. When I was looking at all that, I kept thinking limited and do an RFP. And I think because part of it is perception and the fact that I think a lot of people have that vision of like everybody just dropping in, and maybe if it's more controlled, like for instance, to the parklet model, Pay and Take kind of took the risk of putting in a much better infrastructure. So if you can remember what their original parklet looked like, it was cobbled together. I'll just say that. They went ahead and worked with us to put in place something that if we codified it would be how we would put it in code. So then we can point to this much better structure that's very attractive, very solid, and say, this is what we're trying to put into our code. And so I almost feel like my sense is if we limit it and kind of give a model for the first step out of the gate, it could be more successful than something that's unknown and sounds scary, even though I think, as you've pointed out, it's not. So that's just my 2 cents based on what I've dealt with like recently.
Even if it costs more city staff time and money? I'm just asking.
I guess
By the complaints and the, like,
we're gonna get the complaints, whether it's an RFP model or, because they're gonna call the city. It doesn't matter the issues that happen, whether they're related to the city or not. The people just know you come to City Hall, you call. So quite frankly, I don't know that it makes a difference. We're gonna get the complaints anyway. I mean, if it's RFP, who's doing the code enforcement or code compliance, as we like to call
oh,
it.
you mean not the RFP who does the code compliance?
Well, I guess I would assume that it's still the same people doing the complaints,
Yeah.
whether it's
Okay.
RFP or not.
Okay.
So
Okay.
to me,
Yeah.
it's like RFP is easier. You write an RFP, but we still have to remove code. We may have to remove code barriers. Either way.
Yeah.
But I think the other one, we're removing code barriers, and I'm not really sure what those barriers really are, but we're also like writing our own program. It sounds like if we do the RFP, the Metro Plan, I'm just making a huge assumption, maybe he does that legwork.
The RFP.
Yeah.
I think we have capacity to support the implementation of a program, but Metro Plan is not set up in a structure where we have an insurance program, where I think we could actually be operating or seen to be operating programs. We just don't carry that kind of insurance.
And I know like with the parklets, like I suspect they'll have to also bring in their liability. Like there is a huge, with the parklets, they have to carry a lot of insurance liability and they have to provide that. So, but okay, I mean, yeah.
That would be,
And-
I would say I think we're willing to support, but not hold a contract.
Yeah, and maybe it's just writing the RFP versus somebody's gonna have to write, just like we're writing the parklet program and ordinance, someone's gonna have to write this. And I know Jenny, I'm sure you guys are willing to help put staff to it as well, but.
Yep, and Martin and Chris Fair have also said they're willing. So we're pulling together a large team. I will say, Michelle, thanks for bringing up Euro. Euro did not exist last time we did this. And so just for clarity, we went to RFP for the Gotcha program. We signed a contract. We were planning implementation, and COVID hit, and it was one of those like, oh, the bikes that they were planning to get cannot get out of China. It was very interesting time. So we were very close to, I mean, we were in the planning stages still, but those companies move fast. So we have had many of these conversations before with all the internal folks in the city. And so it will be a little bit of a like, okay, time for a do-over. If we decide to move forward, it will be a council policy decision. There's a lot of folks that we'll need to be working with, but Michelle, exactly to your point. I mean, those contracts are incredibly detailed. It was a very large lift last time. And so, yeah, we are anticipating similar, but as Kim laid out, there are different options for how we can go about this.
I think it'll be easier now there's Euro actually, because all those people, including Risk, are at that table. So hopefully that makes it slightly easier.
Yes.
Jenny, do you recall how ADOT right away was handled with this kind of consideration in the past with those earlier efforts?
I don't, and I wish I did. I've just blacked out 2020 apparently. It's
Which is fair.
I think we spoke mostly about it actually for the SPIN program, which came to Flagstaff in 2018. And ADOT was pretty hands off. It was sort of like, they considered it like someone parking a private bike, right, on Route 66, right? And so we didn't really get into it a lot, and we probably could have more, but yeah, I believe with SPIN it was simply the companies operating in the city, right? They maintain really 100% responsibility for operation, and we have talked kind of among our small team, no one has the capacity to run this thing, right? Whether it's Mountain Line or Metro Plan or the city. And so the company has to be 100% responsible there. And so they didn't have any difference in their operations between whether it was an a city or a ADOT right of way.
Obviously, I'm sure there's many nuances there with
Yes.
non-docking, you know, the locations and so on, so.
And probably I'm getting way too far in the weeds and just full disclosure, it's because of my working on the parklets right now. I have so many questions, but did the company rent the right of way? Like for the parklets, they actually sign a lease with real estate and they're actually leasing that space and they're paying for it. Is that part of this program?
So in the way that we've done in the past, both in 2018 and 2020, as well as where the model is now, it is a dockless model. And so there are not physical docks like you might have seen in more of the old school bike share cities like DC or Chicago or New York. And so that's a little bit different. Do we want to have parking spaces for them? Absolutely. The way that it worked in Gotcha is we were going to geofence parking spaces that's like readily seeable on the app. These are all basically app run essentially. We were not requiring any sort of rental for that. And had not discussed any financial implications. The way that the city was treating it was really, this is the service we're bringing to the city, and we are considering this as use of the right of way that you don't pay for, which is the case in 99% of our right of way for cars.
Except for in the park flag area. Downtown's different. And
Yep, that's the
so
1%. Yep.
To consider, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. It was very helpful.
Do you have what you need from us?
Does the TAC feel that we should approach Euro with this?
I personally do.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
It's Rebecca Stairs with Parks and Rec.
Okay,
She's the one that you can contact to get on her agenda.
okay, thank you.
And Kim, I can help facilitate that too. They're on our list, but Michelle, I appreciate the flag. For earlier than better.
It will get better, like from a staffing standpoint. I think like if they have buy-in early, then that tells us where to start going. I don't know. I would look for
Exactly.
them.
Thanks, folks.
Okay. Metro Plan happenings.
Great. There are a number of happenings in your report. I think a big one is we did submit a request to ADOT to update lighting standards. That's under review. A number of grants that were written, and we talked a little bit about some of the upcoming events, but there are more in your packet. In the interest of time, I'm just scrolling through the slides so you can see them. In the interest of time, I have noticed that Sonia with ADOT did join. She was here to talk about the traffic counts program. Sonia, we did give a brief overview of what our plans are. There are 3 minutes left in this meeting. If you want to give a very brief overview.
I will. Thank you, and I appreciate it. Sorry for being late. I had a problem with the meeting ID. The presentation is in there. I'm going to concentrate just on a second slide with the current count status. You're doing great, or Flagstaff or Metro is doing great, keeping up the counts current. What I would just focus on at the moment is I am seeing, or it's on a graph here, under overdue counts. So those are counts that are not current. And even though it appears to be only 63 non-current counts or overdue, I'm seeing this uptick or a trend or increasing trend, and it's going from June of 22 through June of 24. So I would just take a look at those. And of course, using the gap map is the best way to generate the report, which is basically what I've done to create this graph. And just a quick update, we are working on planning, I apologize, statewide MS2 training, inclusive of traffic training. So overview of a traffic process with MS2. sometime in year 2025. We were hoping it'd be January, but I don't think it will be that soon. So I will keep you updated on that. And basically, we're at this point more than halfway through this collection year, and sooner than later, February 1st of 2025 will hit, and we'll be reporting 2025 counts. So even though it may seem like you've just submitted and shared accounts in February of this year, February of next year is around the corner. So again, thanks for having me. I won't go through these surveys. Those are self-explanatory. They're just there for the reference. And again, sorry for being late, and I appreciate the time that I got. Any questions?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
Kim?
Okay. Can I make an announcement before you adjourn? It's only because it's next week. That's why. We're bringing back Flagstaff walks, and I want to invite all of the TAC to join some of the walks. We're going to put it out on social media, but there's a transit walk on Monday, a mural walk on Tuesday, a ghost walk, spooky walk on Thursday, and an accessibility walk on Saturday. We'll get that out, but please, if you can join us, we would love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, closing business, any items from the TAC? Okay, our next scheduled TAC meeting is January 22nd, 2025. Is that actually right? That far away? Okay. And it is 3:30 on the nose, and we're going to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks everyone online.
Next meeting.
I know.
Yeah, right, another one.
I should have put Jeff and Paul or with me.
Bye. Thank you.
Over here. Upstairs.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
it's in staff.
We made it. Is it in staff?
I gotta go grab my.
Okay. Well, what charge you work? Bye.
Nobody said you got the round one. Eating there.
No, it's better. I just wanted to. What? No, you didn't. I just didn't want to take anything. I was like, it's so funny. Just,
Oh, no, I totally get that. I was like, no, I think I understand, because I'm gonna. You know, like, what the heck? Yes, but it wasn't, it wasn't as much, but I get you're feeling that way. But I didn't hear that.
Just FYI, there is a meeting in here after us. We gotta get out of here. Yeah, no problem.
Is that your Jeep?
Something with
Oh,
it
yeah.
that you can see if it comes through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't leave your stuff in here.
Good, good there.
Started smelling smoke.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, and then
It's
I
like a
like,
campfire.
stage, I was like, that's right, like.
It's huge.
Whenever it was.
It's a controlled burn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was waiting for the train.
It's like a big old cloud. It's really
Yeah.
scary. Yeah, it's a controlled burn. My house smells like somebody's like just smoking brisket.
Abby and her friend came.
That's the worst smell.
So long as it's brisket, right? But it's not really brisket.
Yeah, my email is not responding. Wait, do you have my direct phone number?
I don't, let me know, unless.
I do. Oh, there it is.
And like, no rush at all.
Don't.
No, but.
I just want to see if it came through, because you're on our mailing. It's still down. See if that comes through you. Oh, it's still sending.
And that's where she's like, she got like a little foot ottoman and everything else. That's not her foot ottoman.
So cute. She's so cute.
Still sending it, so okay, it just sent.
Correct, she's like,